Welcome to this Getting Started with Clicker Apps webinar posted by Clicker Software. A member of the Clicker Software team will be speaking about Clicker apps that provide tools for supporting writing, developing speaking skills, and providing access to the content areas of the curriculum.
We're going to be looking at the process of introducing a topic to learners, encouraging them to talk about what they've learned, and then asking them to write about what they've learned on a particular topic. So we're going to be looking at the 3 Clicker apps, which you have access to as part of a Clicker subscription. And these are Clicker Writer, Clicker Books and Clicker Talk. So I'm going to open up the Clicker Books app now. Okay, so I do have a book open, and Clicker Books is an app that allows access to on-screen speech-supported information books. Now, the topic that we're going to look at today is Romans. So the first thing I'm going to do is find a book on Romans. And I'm going to find that book in Learning Grids. So if you're not familiar with Learning Grids, it's a bank of free, ready-to-use Clicker resources. And you can find them in each of the apps by going to the bar up here at the top of the screen and going to the folder icon over here on the left-hand side. So in this menu, we can go to My Files to open up any previously saved Clicker books, or we can go into Learning Grids. Okay, so I'm on the UK version of Learning Grids at the moment. We'll have a quick look at the other regional options in just a moment. And here we can access over 600 Clicker books. So this isn't a static list of resources. Our curriculum team of ex-teachers are constantly making new resources to use in Clicker, and those are added to Learning Grids twice a month. Okay, so over 600 for the UK, nearly 600 for North America, and nearly 600 for Australia and New Zealand. Okay. So we're going to look for a book on Romans, so we can type in the search bar and look for Romans, or we could go through these subject areas, and you can see each subject is then broken down into different topics and categories. So Romans for the UK are in the history subject area, just here. For North America, it's in social studies, and Australia and New Zealand is found in humanities. So there are 4 Clicker books available here on Romans. We have a read a book Clicker book, a read it yourself, and 2 make a book options. So for the purposes of today's webinar, we're going to focus on the read a book and on the read it yourself Clicker book. And we'll start with the read a book. So to use this resource, I'm going to click open, and it will open up in the app. Okay, it's worth noting at this point that the apps function almost identically between iPad and Chromebook. There are a few small differences which we'll discuss as they come up through the webinar. Okay, so this is our kind of title page for our book. We've got an image and we've got a title. And to go to the first content page, we can either use the little arrow down here, or iPad users, you can swipe across the screen. And you can see we now have lots of content giving us information about Roman soldiers and introducing the topic. Okay, and we've got an image again here on this page. To make this text more accessible, you can use this button here. So this is called a read button. And if you click or tap it,
the Roman army was divided into units called legions.
Clicker will read all of the text on the page. I've clicked it again there to stop it partway through, but if you leave it, it will read all of the text on that page. It's currently using a voice called Amy, which is a voice that is available through the apps. It's a child's voice with a British accent. We do have other accented voices that you can use in the apps, and I'll show you how to find those in just a little bit. You may have also noticed that as that text was being read out, it was highlighting the words to help with reading fluency in the same way that you might move your finger along a page when reading with a child. Okay. Now you might find this book and think, yeah, that's great, it's the right sort of content, but we're using slightly different terminology. We might want to break it up a little bit. We might want to add more text in. And so we can edit any of the clicker books from Learning Grids. And to do that, we go to this pen icon up here in the top right, and we can then double click into the text box to make any changes, and we can then edit this text. Okay. Once we are finished making changes, so let's just space this out a little bit as an example. Okay. So we might want to space that out a little bit. Once we finish making changes to this text box, we can select Done. And then to use the resource again, we go to this kind of play button up here, which takes us out of Edit View. Okay. So that's a reader book. Let's have a look at the Read It Yourself now. So I'm going back into Learning Grids by going to my folder icon and then choosing Learning Grids. We'll go back to that Romans topic area. And this time we'll choose the Read It Yourself version. Okay, so clicking open. Now this is another difference between iPads and Chromebooks. I've got a prompt here to save my clicker book. So this will only appear if you're accessing ClickerBooks or any of the Clicker apps on a Chromebook. So Chromebooks, you need to manually save your Clicker files. And when you choose Save, it will open up the File Explorer, and you can choose to save it either on the iPad or into your Google Drive. For iPad users, Clicker will automatically save any resources when you open them from Learning Grids and when you leave Edit View after making any changes. Okay. So this is the Read It Yourself Clicker book now, and to start with, it looks very, very similar to the reader book that we just had open. It doesn't look very different at all. We've got our title up here and we've got our picture of a Roman soldier. When we go to the first page of the book, it looks very different. We've got that same image, but rather than all of that great text giving us lots of information, that's now been condensed down into just the one sentence. So the idea of Read It Yourself Clicker books is that we have simplified the text and removed that read button. We can't have the text read out for us anymore, to encourage learners to have a go at decoding this text for themselves. Now, again, we might want to make some changes to this. Perhaps we want a little bit more challenge. We want to add in another sentence or two. Perhaps we do actually want to add that read button. And we can do that by going into Edit View again up here. So to add a read button, we can click this speaker icon over here on the far left, and that will then be added in here. Or we might want to add a microphone button, this record and play button, which allows us to make a recording. So as the teacher, we might want to record ourselves reading the text or giving information, or we could ask learners to record themselves reading the text on the page and use it to help track reading progress. Okay. If we don't want any of the objects on the page, so I'm going to get rid of this record and play button, we select it and then go to the little bin icon up here. Okay. And then when we're happy with our changes, we go to the play button again and we can leave Edit View. I mentioned that we can make some changes to the voice settings. So to do that, we need to go to this bar again to bring down our toolbar and then go to the cog icon over here to the right. We're going to go to the speech settings, and here we can use the slider to adjust the speed of the voice. We can change the color the text is highlighted. And here we can change the voice that we're using. So Amy and Alfie are children's voices with British accents. Ella is a child's voice with an American accent. But we can download more voices here as well. So we've got lots of options. Okay. So we've introduced our topic with ClickerBooks. Let's now get children talking about what they've learned. And for that, we're going to use Clicker Talk. So Clicker Talk provides talk set activities that help to develop children's oral communication skills. There are 3 different activity types available in Clicker Talk. They are Listen and Say, Talk About, and tell the story. And we'll have a look at how each of those different activity types works. So again, we're going to stick with the topic of Romans. So we're going to see what Romans resources we can find. So just like in Clicker Books, I'm going to go to the bar up here at the top of the screen and then go to my folder icon over here to the left. Again, I can access my files to access any previously saved talk sets, or I can go to Learning Grids. And now Learning Grids is only showing me talk set activities. So these are the resources that will work within this particular app. Okay. Just like in Clicker Books, I could use the search bar to look for Romans, or we can go back to that subject area, select Romans, and that shows the talk set that we have available for that particular topic. I'm going to open this one up, okay, and just up here in the top right, you can see activity type talk about. So this is a talk about activity. So this means we're encouraging children to give some detail on what they've learned about this topic. Now we can approach this activity in whatever order we would like by selecting the picture that we want to start with. So I'm going to choose the sphere picture. Okay. And this then gives me a microphone button so I can record what I know about Romans and spears. So we'll make a quick recording. Roman soldiers carried spears. They were called a pilum. Okay, so I've made my recording there. Not the best recording potentially, so we can always click Roman soldiers carried, and we can re-record if we need to. So Roman soldiers carried a spear called a pilum. Much better, much more concise. I can then use the back arrow to go back to my home page. And you can see I've now got a little speech bubble icon, which I can click to hear my recording played back. And once a child has completed this activity, we end up with a kind of gallery of their recordings. Okay, so that's a talk about. I'm going to edit this resource now to make it a listen and say activity type instead. So to do that, I'm going to go to the bar up here at the top of the screen, choose this pen icon. That takes me to edit view. And you can see that currently talk about is selected, but I've got a listen and say and a tell the story option. Now, before we change it to a listen and say, there's a couple of settings that I want to show you. So first of all, show text. If I toggle that on, you can see that all of the images are now labelled. So we've now got the names of those items listed there in the resource as well. And we can change the number of recordings per picture. So currently we can make 1 recording per picture. We can increase that up to 6 recordings for each picture. So a lot of detail, or potentially multiple children collaborating to make these recordings together. We can also go to this plus to add a new picture, either from the Crick 2 library or from any images saved on your device. And we can drag the images into a different order. Okay. So let's make this a listen and say activity now. Okay, so I'm going to lose the recordings that I've already made, but that's okay. So I'm going to keep the text turned on. It's worth noting listen and say activities only allow us to make 1 recording per picture. And I'm going to go to the play icon to run my activity, to leave edit view. And that changes this home page. So now when I click the pictures,
Tunica, gladius, pilum.
It's reading those words out. So this is kind of a practice page for me to familiarise myself with that vocabulary. I'm going to use the forward arrow to go to the first image, and I can click or tap the picture to listen.
Tunica.
And then record myself saying it, repeating it. Tunica. And we can then use the arrows to go through the activity and make those recordings. Just like the talk about, you can see we've got the recording attached to the image. If I just go into edit view quickly, we can turn listen and say activities into question and answer. So if I click on the picture of the pilum, currently I can delete the image here. And when we click the picture, it's saying the name of the picture, what it's labelled as pilum. I can change that to speak other text, which allows me to type in whatever I want Clicker to say. So what is this object? Very simple question. We could come up with much better ones. But now, when I use the activity and click on this image,
What is this object?
it's reading out the question rather than just saying the name of the object. Okay. So that's a listen and say. We're going to finish off now by having a look at tell the story. So for this, I'm going to take one of our samples because tell the stories work best where you have a sequence of images. So for this sample, we've got images from the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. These are the same images that are used in the Clicker book telling the story. Like the talk about, we can approach this in any order, but I like to start with the first image. And we can then record ourselves retelling the story. So when I click the picture, nothing happens, but I can record what's happening in the story. So once upon a time, there were three bears who lived in a cottage in the woods. One morning, they made some porridge, then went out for a walk. Okay, quick recording there. On to the next part of the story. Goldilocks went for a walk in the woods and came across the three bears' cottage. And now, rather than those recordings being attached to the individual images, they're instead combined into the one speech bubble icon here, which will play all of the recordings back in order so we can listen to the whole retelling with all of the images available at the same time. So that's Clicker Talk. So we've encouraged learners to talk about what they've learned and develop their explanations. Let's now write about Roman soldiers in this case. So for that, we're going to use the Clicker Writer app. Okay, so iPad users, you would have the on-screen keyboard available at the bottom of the screen to type. Chromebook users, you can use your physical keyboard like I'm going to be doing today, just a little bit quicker. And there are three different Clicker sets available in Clicker Writer that support writing at different ability levels. So these are sentence sets for early readers and writers, recreating specific sentences word by word. Connect sets, which offer a scaffolded writing activity where learners have more choice, but they still have a lot of support. And word banks, which are ideal for your more independent writers who can form sentences, but still need help with keywords and phrases. Okay, so we'll have a look at some examples of each of those for writing about Roman soldiers. So just like in the other apps, we're going to go to the folder icon in the top left. Now, one difference, we don't need to bring the toolbar down to do that. That's already available. Just like before, My Files and Learning Grids are available to us in that menu. Okay, and we've got lots of resources available in Clicker Writer. We've got over 1,300 for the UK, over 1,200 for North America, and over 1,100 for Australia and New Zealand. And again, this is being added to all the time. Okay, so we'll go to the history subject area again and straight into Romans. And that gives us 13 resources. Now I'm going to narrow that down further. I'm going to show you a sentence set first. So to find that easily, I'm going to tick this sentence sets box just here, and this only displays sentence sets on that topic. And we know it's a sentence set because it's labelled above the open button. So we'll open this one up, and we've now got a grid of words where our on-screen keyboard was, containing all of the words that we need to build our first sentence, but they're in a random order. Okay. We've also got an image to help with overall comprehension of the sentence, and we can click that image to add it into the document and illustrate our writing. We can then click or tap the words to add them into the document and build our sentence. If we come across a word in the grid that we're not sure about, we can't decode it, we can use speech support in Clicker Writer as well. So Chromebook users, you can right-click any words to hear them read out.
Equipment.
iPad users, you don't have a right-click, so instead you can go to this blue button just here, tap it, and then tap the word you want to hear read out.
Equipment.
Sentence sets also offer any punctuation that we need to complete the sentence. And when we complete the sentence,
A Roman soldier had special clothes and equipment.
Clicker reads your sentence back for you, so you can make sure that you're happy with the sentence you've written, that it makes sense, that we haven't missed any words out. We can then move to the next sentence in the resource with the forward arrow here, or again, iPad users, you can swipe across the grid to move to the next sentence. Now, it may be that your learners need a bit more support figuring out some of the sentences. So this particular resource has a model sentence applied, and the model sentence that's available is called a view and remember model. So that means we can go to this eye icon just here, which allows us to see the sentence that we're trying to write. We can click or tap the sentence to hear it read out.
He wore a tunic to protect his skin.
But we can't add any words into the document while that sentence is open. So it becomes a look, cover, write, check style activity. Just like the talk sets, just like the Clicker books, we can edit these writing grids. And we can do that by going to this grid icon up here in the top right. So on the right of the screen, we can make changes to the sentence we currently have selected. And on the left, we can move between the different sentences in the resource. So you can see view and remember is currently selected for the model, and for the word order, they're in a random order. So we could have no model sentence at all. We could have a view and copy model sentence, which looks like this. We could have a listen model, which replaces that eye icon with a speaker, which we can select to hear the sentence read out.
He wore a tunic to protect his skin.
Okay. We can change the order the words are offered to alphabetical order, sentence order, or guided order, which only allows us to select the words in the correct order. So I'm going to change mine to sentence order with the listen model. And chances are I'm going to want any changes I make to this sentence to be applied to all of the sentences in the resource. So rather than having to click through each of those and make those changes, I can go to Apply Settings to All Grids down here at the bottom of the screen. It's the model and the order settings that I want to apply. And now all of my sentences have that listen model and the words are offered in the correct sentence order. Let's have a look at a connect set now for comparison. So just going back into learning grids, back to Romans, connect sets this time, and we'll open this one up. So this first grid contains similar information to what was offered in the sentence set, but we've got a lot more choice in what order we want to add this into the document. Okay, as we go through the tabs down here at the bottom of the screen, we can then go into more detail than we would have with the sentence set. And the last two grids offer images, so we can choose when and how we want to illustrate our writing. Apart from that, it functions very similarly to the sentence set. We can click or tap the words to add them into the document, and we can use speech support to hear those words read out.
A spear.
Okay. We can also edit this resource. So I'm going to go into Edit View again. I'm just going to change the background colour to make this a little bit clearer. So the important thing to remember when editing a connect set is that it works based on clusters of words. So my first cluster, which is now outlined in red, now I've clicked it, that contains my sentence starters. My second cluster contains my verbs. My third cluster contains my nouns. And my final cluster contains my punctuation and words I could use to extend my sentence. If I want to change the words offered in a cluster, I need to select it. and then change the words in the cluster content text box at the top of the screen. So I've typed had in there, and had is now offered in this cluster. Okay, let's have a quick look at word banks now. So just going back into learning grids, back to Romans. Now there are 11 word banks on Romans. I'm going to open up this one here called Roman Soldier. Okay. So you can see this is offering key vocabulary on the topic, and it's split into tabs for different pieces of equipment. So we've got vocabulary for writing about Roman soldiers' tunic, belt, armour, helmet, etc. The idea of this word bank would be that children are building the sentence for themselves, either typing with a physical keyboard, or we can toggle to the on-screen keyboard with this green button here. Okay. And we can still access the speech support for any of the vocabulary offered in the grid.
Pelham.
To edit a word bank, going into Edit View, all we need to do is change the words listed in the words text box, and that will change the words offered in the grids. Okay. A couple of final tools to be aware of in Clicker Writer to support writing in the document. Voice notes, fantastic for learners who can tell you their ideas but struggle to get them written down on paper. You can make a voice note by going to this microphone button here just beneath the folder icon and make a recording. So it had a sharp point and a wooden staff or shaft. Okay.
He carried a spear called a pelham.
If we make a misspelling in the document, so it had a sharp point, a misspelled point, it's underlined in red to show that it's a misspelling. When I click or tap the word, I'm offered suggestions just here above my word bank. I can listen to those suggestions with the speech support
Point.
before making a decision. Finally, I can turn on the predictor with this icon just here, which offers me words that I might want to use to help with writing fluency and spelling. Okay, so we have now come to the end of this webinar. I do hope you've found it useful.
Bridges thanks Clicker Software for providing this Getting Started with Clicker Apps webinar. For further questions or information about Clicker Apps, please contact Bridges Canada via email at info@bridges-canada.com or by phone at 1-800-353-1107. If you'd like training on any Clicker product, please contact Christy McDonald. Her email is christy@bridges-canada.com, and she can discuss your training needs or provide you with more information about how we can facilitate your successful implementation of your Clicker software.